Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony in Diversity, and today we're speaking with Ian Hamilton of the Focolare movement. Thanks for coming in, Ian.
I'm very happy to be here.
You're part of the Focolare movement, and we'll talk about the Focolare movement later. But you were born in South Africa. That's where the story starts. Tell us some of the story.
Yeah, that's where the story starts. I mean, South Africa, in a certain sense, had a huge effect on me from the point of view of the way that the government, well, in a way, I became very prejudiced in many ways. But let me start really from when I was at university. My father was sent overseas. He was a mining engineer, and he asked me to follow him and be with him in England. I was an Anglican by then, and so I followed them over, and I'm a very simple South African and simple way of life, and I came into the student revolution of this the late 60s and early 70s, and for me it was a huge cultural shock. But being a youth and being a young person, I became in some ways involved in it. And but I realized that this way of being wasn't me, and so I started looking for communities, and I really felt that I needed to find a community of people who, in a certain sense, I could share my life with on a real level. And I looked an awful lot, but I never really found anything. Anyway, one night I was at a party, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and everything was going. And I really felt, and I felt terribly depressed, because I really felt, this is not me, this is not who I am. You know, what do I do with a life like this? And so I left the party and I went to a Wimpy bar, and a Wimpy bar in England is a place where you go and get coffee at night. And 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got my coffee and I sat down, and I was in front of this person, and this person told me her life story. And you know, I don't know if you remember that song from the old days, which was The Streets of London. It was
Yes.
a song of that time.
Yep.
And this woman was one of these people who always had a permanent suitcase by her side and lived on the streets of London. And but the incredible thing was, that night when I left that place, I really felt an incredible sense of the presence of God and the love of God specifically for myself. And then anyway, I left that place, and a few nights later I was living at that time in a hotel, in a residential hotel in Knightsbridge in London. I was a maths teacher, and I went into the TV room, and there was this film about a place called Lopiano. I actually only saw the last part of it, but the person on the film was talking about that God is not on cloud 9, but as close as you are to me. And I was very struck by this, because in a certain sense, God had always been sort of kind of far away, but in nature, but I'd never really connected that maybe, you know, that God was in people, that God, that the presence of God could be found with people. Anyway, so I wrote to the BBC and I said to them, you know, what is this all about? And they sent me a letter and said to me, go to this house in London. And I thought to myself, oh no, imagine another one of these groups. I've had enough of these groups. I don't want anything to do with that. Anyways, it was December, I think, of 1970. And so it was the holidays, and I went skiing in Austria. And when I came back from that trip, I had the same sense of, you know, what is life about? You know, a sense of really, you know, things are so meaningless. You know, I can't find people, you know, that want to share kind of my life. And so I remember that letter, and I went and got the letter, and I went to this house in London. And when I walked into the house and started talking to the people there, that incredible experience that I had with that woman that night, of when I left, there was this incredible sense of the presence of God. And so I made that experience again with these people in this house. So I asked them, the Focolare movement and all the rest of it, and that next year, 71, I was supposed to be going back to South Africa. And so I said, could you please let me go and stay in this place called Lopiano for 3 months. And so now let me explain a bit about what is this place Lopiano. This place Lopiano is like a permanent city, a population of about 1,000 people from all walks of life who want to live the gospel to the full, and who want to make a commitment to living the gospel. And so there are a lot of young people, priests, religious, married people who go there to make an experience, although there is a permanent population of about 1,000 people. So I went there and I stayed for 3 months, and after the 3 months I said I want to stay some more. So in fact in the end I stayed for 2 years. And I understood that God was calling me to consecrate myself as an Anglican, although it was a Catholic movement, to living for this spirituality of Chiara Lubich in the Focolare movement. And so that is what I have been doing for the last 45 years. Right. And so that's sort of that experience there.
Yes, indeed. So this issue of God's love, and you felt after that meeting with that woman that you felt as you walked away that God actually loved you. Now we're going to run out of time, so we'll talk about this after the break. However, to finish my question is, how did that feel? It's like we talk about love all the time in one way or another, but to be actually sitting there and to get up from the meeting and walk away, and after everything you'd been and done in that time, you felt somehow that you were loved by God. Be interested to hear how you would describe that. But we'll go to a break. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. We're speaking with Ian Hamilton. He's from the Focolare movement. Before the break, Ian, I asked you about the fact that you had this sudden recognition that I am loved by God after that encounter. And then you went from there to the recognition of the Focolare movement, then you went to Lopiano. What happened with that? How did it feel when you first had the recognition, and what happened to your love at Lopiano, and why?
Well, I think the thing about love is that there's this huge contrast that I felt. In the beginning, I had this huge sense of suffering within myself, and then the transition from the sense of futility to this incredible sense of peace and harmony and beauty. And that is something that transforms you, because it's like you come out from the darkness to the light. And I think that in every relationship that we have, there could be moments of darkness, but if you really throw yourself into being for the other, then you come out into this glorious sense of light. And that glorious sense of light, of course, is our Lord, because He was the one who took on the suffering of the world, and transformed it into light. So essentially I think that the experience that I had at Lopiano was this immersing myself into the love of the other, that God in a certain sense speaks to us with an amplifier because we love our brother. Because the last commandment of Jesus was love your neighbor as yourself, or I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you.
Yep.
And the as is, in a certain sense, means that he suffered for us. So we should be prepared to suffer for each other and take on the negativity of the other in order to love that in the other, so that I can find light and the other person can find light. So that was such a powerful experience for me, that was, I think, that God sees us, God understands us, and he called me to this way of life as a consecrated person. And so, as I said before, I've been involved with this for 45 years. But now, where did this come from? It came from this person called Chiara Lubich. And Chiara Lubich, in 1943, felt a certain call from God, and she understood that it wasn't going to be in the traditional sense of either becoming a nun or a person consecrated, let's say, alone in the world, but that she was being called to something else.
Yeah.
And it was being, 1943 Trent was being heavily bombed because it was getting towards the sort of end of the Second World War. And so what was happening was that slowly, because Chiara had this call and because she was really very inspired and had a lot of wisdom to give a lot of people, because she was really called by God, she had a number of companions around her, and when they took with them to the air raid shelters, they took the gospel. And in the gospel, she felt that there was an illumination coming out of the gospel when they read the gospel in the shelters. For instance, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Or it is not he who says, Lord, Lord, but who does the will of my Father. And she felt, that these phrases were, in a certain sense, giving them life.
Yeah.
So, practically, Chiara Lubich was the person who, she didn't really think of starting anything, but slowly people began to follow her. And so, started in Italy, and then it went to Brazil and all over Europe, and it is now in 180 countries. And the people that are involved are not just the consecrated people. They are people from all walks of life. They are priests, they are religious, they are bishops, all who take on the spirituality and feel that they can take this new spirituality, which is about love for the brother, no longer a individual me towards God, but rather we together towards God.
Yeah.
And so this is let's say, the novelty of this spirituality, and I think it is especially made for these times where we realize that relationships are the only things that can change the world.
Yeah, so she sounds as though, and in discourse earlier, she was a very inspirational person, and she actually travelled around quite a bit with. Not as a proselytizer, but was she invited, or did she go on her own?
Well, it was amazingly, as things developed, she got to know, for instance, the first, let's say, outside of the Catholic Church, there were some Lutherans who said, oh, look, there's these Catholics who are living the gospel, we want to get to know them. And so slowly, with a relationship developed. In actual fact, in a place in Ottmaring in Germany, there's another one of these towns like Loppiano, only it's an ecumenical town. And there are a Bruderschaft and Focolare people who live there in community, and to give a witness to ecumenism and a witness to the love of God between different denominations. Then later on, what happened was that she was invited to Japan by the Buddhists, because they'd heard about this person who had an incredibly strong, let's say, new spirituality that had something to do with the love of brother. And so she spoke about her experience, and the Buddhists were very much struck by Chiara. And so they, in some way, became involved in the sense that they understand that the spirituality has an awful lot to give to us as people.
Yeah.
Then she was invited to India to an ashram, and so she came in contact with the Hindus, and they were very, very struck by her.
And well, they might be, and we're struck by time at the moment.
Yes.
We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Allah. Hallelujah. Mani Allah.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony Diversity, and we're speaking with Ian Hamilton from the Focolare movement. And we were speaking about consecrated people and lay people, and you're a consecrated Focolare. What's it like to be living as a Focolarini in a community? It's a single house, is it? What's it like? How does it work?
Well, I think the important thing for everyone to understand about the Focolare is it's not just about the people who are the consecrated people. We are the minority. And so there are people who have a vocation of different kinds within the Focolare. So they are the Focolarini, these are the people who are consecrated people who live in community. Then there are those who are called the married Focolarini. Obviously they're married, they live in their own houses, and but they are in some ways connected to, in a very tight way, with the Focolare centres. And they are a huge help to us from the point of view is that they really are a window on the world for us. Now, and then there's another branch of the movement. There are many branches of the movement, but let's say those ones that are really, really committed is it a branch of people who feel that they have given their life to the worlds of work. In other words, they bring the spirituality into those places where they work. And so, for instance, there would be the world of medicine, the world of politics, the world of art, and different worlds where really, I mean, I think that Christianity and this spirituality is asking us to bring Christ back into these places, and so that we can live this spirituality, which we're all living. I mean, in my house, I live it on a permanent basis, this being for the other. In other words, my consecration is that I have given away everything, the money that I earn, and I have a normal job. I was a mathematician, I was teaching in a school, now I'm retired, but all of us, we all have jobs, and the money that we have, we put in common, and whatever's surplus to what our living is given away, and sent also to the center of our movement in Rome, so that they can help those places around the world that need the money in some way. So really the relationship, everything is the relationship. So there are moments when relationships can be very difficult, but we make a pact of mercy. In other words, every day we declare that I love you, you love me, and that the most important thing is that we are ready to die for one another. And relationships can only, in a certain sense, go ahead if I'm ready to give my all.
Right.
And so if this becomes reciprocal, then we can truly say, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there are you in the midst of them. And so that is true for all the different vocations within the Focolare movement. I mean, those people who do work for the world of work, they're not in our communities. Everything that they do, when they meet together, everything that they do is based on that premise, that we unconditionally love each other so that there can be this presence of Jesus amongst us. And so let's say that I would do nothing off my own bat without first consulting with those around me. So I am not a private person. I am a person who is intrinsically connected to the others, and what I do must be seen in common with them before I actually do it. So living in the community, I'm not a private person. I'm a person who has given my life to the other so that whatever we decide is what we do. And so, let's say that takes a huge amount of commitment,
Yes, it
but
does.
on the other level, it is a hugely enriching thing, because it's like if I'm willing to take on the community so that they, in a way, help me to understand what the will of God for me is, then everything becomes simple, everything becomes beautiful, because I'm not doing it because I want to do it. I'm doing it because it's what helps the community.
Yeah.
And this is I think the sort of thing that can change the world around us, is because we're very insular in Western society. We do our own thing, but freedom is not doing your own thing. You know, the freedom is finding, together with your brothers and sisters, what is the right thing to do and how to do it together.
That's a very interesting model. Is that just a Focolare model, or are there others which you are familiar with?
Well, I
on
think
that
that
basis?
it's specifically Focolare because one of our central issues is that where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them.
Right.
So our gathering together isn't just I go because I want to be there. I go because I want to build with my brothers and sisters. I want to find out what is that God wants from us, not just from me. Certainly there are moments when I'm on my own and I have to then discern within myself what is the will of God for myself. But mostly what I do, especially because I live in this community and I live, very tightly within this community, a lot of what we do is based on what we've decided to do together and how we want to do it together.
Yeah, and is there? I would imagine that the measure of what should be done, is it to do with the quality of the love which will be the outcome of that action? Is that a collective awareness? Yeah.
Yes, that's the saying. Matthew, I think it's Matthew 28, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of yourself.
Yeah.
In the midst of you, is that that presence of Jesus amongst us is like the answer to who we are and how we do things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we're out of time for this week. Would you be happy to come back next week and speak?
I'm very happy to come back and speak again, yes.
Thank you very much. You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week and we'll be speaking with Ian Hamilton. Thanks for watching and bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allah.